I personally was trying to find a fellowship, personally at UW.
5,000 page views or something like that, and then it generated another 15,000.
Your time here, really do what you want to do, and then get to know more people. So
yeah, don't be shy, taking that first step.
Oh yeah.
Right.
It's real raw.
I know that both of you guys really like Kanye. Is that correct?
Yes.
I think Ryan is above me now.
Welcome to the 6th episode of the AACF podcast known as Awaken. I'm Daniel.
I'm Doug.
And we are your hosts. Throughout the next few weeks, we are going to be introducing you to different members of our community so that you can get to know your fellow AACFers. And today we're joined by Thomas Chen. He was the youth pastor for the Chinese Church of Christ and pastor for the Breakaway Christian Fellowship before he decided by faith to move up to Seattle and become our very own AACF staffer. You can catch him at a small group on Zoom every Friday at 3:30 p.m. Welcome to the podcast, Thomas.
Hey, thanks, guys. Awesome to be on here. Appreciate it.
How are you? How's quarantine, man?
Quarantine's been okay. I mean, all things considered, we're surviving and somewhat thriving. So, in the midst of all this, I think we're still very blessed with what we have. We miss you guys, though. It's weird being closest to campus while you guys are all far away. Not far away, but further. But it's been good to be able to catch up on Zoom and see each other. So that's been an exciting thing for me. Yeah. How are you guys? You guys look like you're alive, which is good.
Yeah, I think quarantine's been all right. It has pros and cons. For once, even with all the pre-recorded lectures and just having to do everything digitally, I think it has really weighed my eyes down because every day I'm constantly looking at a screen for 7-8 hours a day, and it's really hard to find time where I could just do things that I enjoy without looking at a screen. And so that's been a pretty big problem. And I think that has allowed me to understand and value the importance of just going outside and seeing people and just physical activity in general. And so that's the con about it. And I think the pro is that it has allowed me to use the time and space to try new things like this podcast. And I think it's great that this has given me the opportunity to just explore what I can do and maybe sharpen skills that I haven't been able to have the time to do. And I think with this time and space, we're given this opportunity to experiment. And with experimentation means, hey, if it doesn't go as it's planned, then it's fine. Because at the end, we tried and we took on the challenge of trying to create something. And that's what I've been enjoying about this.
I love it. I love that you guys are willing to try new things. And especially right now, I think the podcast comes at a good time too. It gives us something to look forward to, just listen and hear how different, students are doing. So the ones I've heard so far, it's been great because I think every one of them, I've learned something new about somebody. Yeah. Doug, you doing okay here?
Yeah, I think same as Daniel. I just hate looking at a screen for the whole day. I really hate it. It's kind of awful. But other than that, I think I've been enjoying my time, surprisingly. Just I don't know, it's given me a lot of time to just rest and just wind down, especially since I always come up to UW almost every day.
That's true.
So it's nice to have time to just wind down and just have a break. Yeah. But I really miss just interacting with people physically.
I miss you too, Doug.
Yes, I miss you a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
So, as I said in the intro, as a former pastor, when I was going through one of your sermons, I found it interesting that the night before you would present your sermon, that you would, in your bed, recite your speech multiple times, and you would constantly ask your wife, Esther, for tips or advice in general. With that being said, as a former pastor, can you describe what goes into preparing a sermon each week? From Monday to Saturday, can you describe the process and what goes into this preparation?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, it's actually been a while since I created or wrote a new sermon. I do have some in my archive now that when I guest speak, I would take one of those. But yeah, when I was pastoring before, would need to come up with new sermons each time. And so I would say Mondays are usually days off for us as pastors, which is, right after a weekend. So maybe Tuesday and Wednesday would be kind of like the study of the passage and just seeing what God is saying in his word. I remember taking seminary class on sermon, homiletics, which is preaching. And they would say you got to be faithful to the text, you got to be interesting, you got to be relevant, all those things. And so I try to be as faithful to the text as possible, and that would mean taking time to actually read the text and see what is it really trying to say, what's the author saying, right? So that takes some time, and you want to give yourself some time to do that rather than just start writing. And so that will take some time to doing that, and as well as, like part of that process is getting commentaries, getting stuff to help me, understand what the text is saying. And then it's sermon prepping is kind of more of an art. So a lot of times, like, ideas will come when I'm in the shower, or like on some random times they'll just come up like an illustration from my life or something like that. And then after maybe 1 or a day and a half or something, then I'll start writing it. And before I start writing, I think I would outline or something, just give myself like I understand what my main topic is, like what is the main thing that God is saying through the author in this text to the people. And then how do I then take that timeless truth and let it speak to people today in our context. And then so in starting to flesh out, that outline, and then I would take pretty much another couple days at least to write it all out. So what I do is I actually write the whole manuscript. I write word by word my sermon. And yeah, that will take probably another couple days to do that. By days, I don't mean like the whole 24 hours. I mean like the work day, like the couple hours or few hours that I'm focused on doing that. And then usually by Friday, like I'm done. And then Saturday night, which is, right before Sunday morning, I would actually like go through it and, yeah, like you said, recite it, like practice it, practice going through it so that when I do give it, I'm not so reliant on my notes and having to look down all the time, but rather I know where I'm going. It's kind of fresh in my head, and it's going to be as smooth as possible so that when I do speak it, that people are hearing me. They're not hearing me, say a speech. They're hearing my heart, right? And coming out as natural as possible so that they can receive it, really receive the word of God, which is very transforming, right? And I want to minimize any barriers between, them and the message that God has for them. So I think that's pretty much my process.
I think something interesting that you talk about is the fact that you would continue to recite, because for me, when I think about how a pastor prepares for a sermon, they would jot down a general outline and have some basic points, but then they would trust that God would give them the words to speak through the notes that they've been jotting down. And I think in a sense, they wouldn't necessarily write everything out. And so as someone as comfortable as you with just putting yourself out there, speaking to the public and just hosting those type of qualities,
right,
it makes me surprised by the fact that you would write everything out. And so what I was wondering is, because of the grueling process, does the phrase where every minute of a sermon requires an hour of preparation, does that phrase ring true to you at all?
Every word? Oh, gee. That's crazy. Yeah. I get where that's going. Yeah, where like the words on there, I mean, it's not just, they're all intentional, right? They're not like just free flow thoughts everywhere, So I totally I totally understand that. But like the things I say has got to be intentional. I think that's one main reason why I would manuscript it, as in I would write it all out. Pretty much in the last previous years, I would actually outline the manuscript, as in the manuscript is actually being outlined. I don't know if that makes sense, but like it's almost word by word, but then it's indented in a way that looks like an outline, so that when I visually see it, I know what's the main topic, and I know what illustration or what things I'm saying here, how that flows and how that fits in what I'm trying to say. Now, the reason I do all that and the reason I write out more than, let's say, just a word here and there is because, well, first, it keeps me on track so that I'm not like going all off and everything. I make sure I'm always on track with what I'm trying to say, given the time that I have. But also, I think over the years of ministry and pastoring, getting guest speaking opportunities to different churches and different retreats that I've been able to speak at, I often take messages I've done in the past. Now, had I not written it all out before, like, it would be harder to remember what I've said, because if you're spending all this time researching and like studying the word, and then coming out with a sermon, for me to have it all there, and now actually I have it all in my box there, all my sermons, actually all in my computer too. I could just pull it up and everything is there. And so that makes it a lot easier to kind of like, okay, I could just tweak it a little bit for the audience here, and I could give this same sermon again. So that really helps me out a lot. Now, and that's another reason why I would practice Saturday night, because I don't want to just read it, okay? So I practice enough where people wouldn't think I have all the words written there. Do you know what I mean? Like, it is written there so that I can stay on point, but then I'm giving it in the way that it hopefully it's more natural, and like I'm speaking to them. Yeah. But every pastor does it differently. So this is, if you ask me this, how I do it, there are pastors out there I've seen, they just give it without any notes. They don't even look down. I'm like, wow, I wish I could do that. But it's amazing. I mean, I'm talking about pastors who could give a sermon like without notes, and yet it's on topic, it's on point, it's clear and concise, everything. I'm like, that's awesome. Now you have pastors who could like have no notes and they're just going off everywhere, which I sometimes do. And then you're like, well, that's why they're going off, because they don't have those notes there. But yeah.
I'm just wondering, do you ever get like nervous when you do like sermons at all? Because I feel like, at least for me, if I like practice a lot of like a speech or like some kind of presentation, I feel like the more I practice it, the more like nervous I get. I'm just like, oh shoot, I have to present this. I eventually have to like present this to an audience. And I'm just getting super nervous. So normally what I do is like, I don't practice at all or prepare that much, right? So I'm kind of like the opposite of you. But I'm just wondering, do you ever get like nervous or just like, do you get nervous often?
Yeah, well, I hear you when you say like the more you like kind of make it a thing, it's more expectation maybe on yourself. Kind of like, well, I practice so much, I'm not giving a presentation. You're kind of psyching yourself up on that. For me, I would say I don't get nervous anymore, or even before. So this is one of those things that I believe is God gifted, or God, like, it's God. Because believe it or not, growing up, I hated speech. Like, I hated the speech class, and I hated getting in front of people and talking. And I never liked it until I never liked it until I started seminary, until I started coming back to my home church and they gave me an opportunity to speak. And then when I started speaking, I realized, and by that time, I've already sensed God's call for me in the ministry. So by that time, then I realized like, wow, I actually enjoy this. And not only enjoy it, but like I'm not nervous and I enjoy speaking. So the only way, or I would say a big part of this, I would say, is I attribute it to God. Like, it's actually a spiritual thing for me, where I did not grow up being able to, or enjoying, or wanting to speak in front of people. Now, when it came to acting, I loved acting. I love being someone I'm not in front of people, but having to be someone who I was and actually speak from my heart to people, I couldn't do it. Not until until my seminary years. And then after that, then I think God just developed that in me and gave me more of a passion for speaking his word and explaining and sharing in front of people. So to be honest, the Thomas you guys see now is not the Thomas, or very different from high school me, very, very different from junior high me, like even maybe college, like a lot of this have been developed through God's spiritual anointing, when it comes down to it.
Yeah, and I think what fascinates me about what you kind of just said are two things. First is the shower, when you talk about the shower, because for me, when I was thinking about what questions I would ask you, I was struggling a little bit last night, and to the point where I told myself, hey, I'm going to sit on this and I'm going to let it marinate in my head a little bit. I'm going to take a break. So I decided to go take a shower. And in the shower, that's when two great questions came up in my mind. And I think it just really shows how when you're thinking about something so much, one of the most important reminders for yourself is to rest from it for a little bit. Take a break from it. Because when you're consciously thinking about the same thing over and over for such a long period of time, that's when it makes it harder for you to really develop the thoughts that come out. But once you start resting and you just let your thoughts sit in, that's when things come clearer. And I think that's just really God telling me what type of questions I should really ask. And that's just God speaking to me. And it just emphasizes how important resting and just pausing yourself instead of just going at full speed all the time, and just understand that's such an important part of your journey. And the second thing is just the fact that speech and speaking was such a weakness for you at start. And I think it's just amazing to see how God can take a weakness and just turn into one of your biggest strengths. Like now, as a pastor, as a trivia game host, as a person who loves putting himself out there, it's crazy to see that, hey, you may not like this, but in this, you're going to grow so much, and this is where your faith's going to be, and how your faith is developed. Because for you, when you start speaking, you're like, this is something I just can't do. But the fact that God wanted to take that and turn it into something so positive, it just shows how much trust and confidence you can put in him to turn something that you see as a weakness into one of your biggest strengths. And I think that just shows the transformation that God has placed on you. And yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, for sure. What's amazing about that, as you were just talking about, it points to Jesus. It points to God, right? It's the passage that talks about our weakness, right? Demonstrates God's power, right? Like in our weakness, His strength is perfect, right? We point others to Jesus, right? It's like, this is not me. This is because of what God has done and how he's moved in my life and what he does. Like that's what you see, and I love doing that. I love being able to attribute all these things to God, because really it is him,
Yeah. And as a man who has made his life mission to bringing more people to Christ and sharing the gospel, I can imagine that there could be a lot of hate and despair and anger in that when you try to share the gospel with others. And as a man that has had his mission and who has been through the trials, what do you think really discourages people ultimately from opening up their minds to Christ?
Yeah, I would say, the more and more I understand the gospel, and more I understand like people, I realize that what keeps people from the gospel or from God himself, a lot of it is a misunderstanding of who God is and a misunderstanding what the gospel is. Really, when it comes down to the gospel is good news. That's what the word gospel comes from, okay? It's good news. And oftentimes I think the way it's packaged, it's not good news. And if it's not good news, a lot of people don't want that, right? Like if the good news is God hates me, if the good news is God hates me until I accept Jesus, right? Then it's like, well, I hate him too. I don't like him either. And you have that message for me, I don't like you Christians either, right? But really the message is that God has reconciled the world to himself. And that actually comes straight from the Bible in Corinthians. And because of that, I could go up to any non-Christian and say, look, God accepts you. Actually, God has come all the way towards you already. You don't need to go all the way to him. See, the thing is, I think people often think I have to do all these things to get up to God. And oftentimes that's how life works. That's how you achieve things in life. And that's how a lot of religions are. You have to climb the mountain to get to this divine being, right? You got to do the work. You got to go on this pilgrimage and get to him. But Christianity is the good news where God has come down already, and he has come down as Jesus, as a baby, right, for us. And that's the message for the world that the world needs to hear. And to be honest with you, nowadays, when I share the gospel to non-Christians and to just share this good news, they're not hostile to that. If anything, it's like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't hear about that, or the God that I grew up thinking or believing, or that Christians often portray, is a God that hates our guts, a God that's against me and that I would burn in hell forever if I were to, and that's not the good news. So for me, I think that's a huge hang up when it comes to, or barrier when it comes to people coming to know God as he is. Granted, there might be people, even with that good news, that are like, no, or like, don't even talk to me about God. But I will say a lot of that is kind of a trigger. There's some sort of rejection. There's some sort of thing that cause them to reject God. But the thing is, if the good news is about God accepting and loving us, like to reject that, like who would reject someone that loves them unless there's some real some deep hurt and issues there, right? So what that means is there's probably some deep hurt and issues that people have in their lives, that they've experienced in their lives, that have caused them to react in that way. So with that said, my hope is that if and when people reject Jesus, as in the process of me sharing Christ with them, I want them to reject Jesus and the gospel as he is and as the gospel is. I don't want them to reject Jesus and the gospel as it's not, right? Because if they are rejecting Jesus and the gospel and God, right, as like, oh yeah, I don't want that because God wouldn't want anything to do with me, then I would say you're not rejecting God. That's not the God that I believe, So you're not really rejecting the gospel. I want to get to the point where they hear the good news as it is. And if they were to reject that and they're hostile against it, they're like, I don't want that, then at least could step back and go, at least they know the gospel and they're rejecting the gospel as it is, rather than a misunderstanding of it, which breaks my heart, right? It's like, gosh, they don't know that God loves them and they're rejecting a false idea of who God is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I might have gone a little off tangent on that, but that's kind of my whole thought about the whole gospel and my passion for wanting people to understand it before they reject it, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's great. Honestly, like I think I agree too. Like I've had, probably not as much as you, okay, but like I've had times where I have shared the gospel before, and it does feel kind of hard because like there is that barrier, as you're saying. But like I think, at least for me, maybe it's because I haven't shared enough, or maybe like it's gonna happen later. Typically, whenever I have shared the gospel, it normally ends up like, oh, that's cool, and then like they just go on with their day. But like I'm just wondering, like, do you have any like testimonies of or stories where it's like you have shared the gospel to them, they may or may not have taken it, but then later on they like, come back and they're like, hey, wait, this thing that you shared to me, it's like actually pretty good. There is like that good news kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I got to think about something that comes to mind. I know it has, but yes. So a lot of times sharing it, right? It's actually becomes very much organic or very natural. And I'm hoping that like with any of you and all of us, when it comes to sharing the gospel, it becomes less and less about what we're doing, right? Like less and less about a task, like we're going to share the gospel now, or we're going to do this and go through these steps now with people. But rather, I want us to see sharing the gospel or evangelizing, all that stuff as something you are, right? You are not doing outreach, you are outreaching. And so for me, when it comes to like sharing the gospel, I would say just like, just being around someone, okay, and just showing them and sharing with them, like, yeah, this is who I am, and also representing to them who Jesus is. Okay, so things that are coming to mind as I'm sharing this is, so I might have shared this before, maybe or maybe not, but like my family loves going on cruises, and can't now, but when we were on cruises, something I love doing, and this might sound very interesting, but I love going to the nightclubs. Okay, I love going to nightclubs because one, I love dancing. I love that I could eat so much during the day and work it off at night. But that's one reason. Second reason, well, actually, many reasons. Second reason is because my kids are sleeping, Esther's sleeping. I'm kind of more of a night person. I have a lot of energy. I got to get it out. That's second reason. Third reason, okay, is this. And is like, I want to represent to the world who Jesus is. I'm not going to stay away from the world because I am to be the light of the world, right? We often hear like, not of this world, but I feel like that saying is kind of not correct because it's incomplete. We're not of this world, but we're sent into. See, we got to finish it off. We're sent into this world, right? And so for me, being there, for example, okay, and just meeting people. So I go there and I just start meeting people. I don't know. And I love doing that because as you stay on the same boat, eventually you see each other out at breakfast, you see each other everywhere. And then by the end of the week, right, day one's the hardest because I go there and I'm like dancing by myself. I literally go to dance by myself. That's how no shame I have at this point. I dance by myself and then I'm like getting to the DJ, whoever, and then I start talking to people. Next thing you know, you're developing friendships, whatever. You see each other next day on your excursion, whatever. You see each other again the following night and you go, hey, you're going to see you tonight? All right. By the last night, I know everybody, right? In the whole place. And what's really neat is I feel like just by being there, I am representing Jesus. Now, I'm not representing Jesus by like getting drunk or anything. I'm representing Jesus by being with them. And they would ask me, right? Like it'll come up like, hey, so where are you from? All that stuff. Or what do you do? For me, being a pastor is easy to get into the topic of Jesus because I tell them, oh, I'm a church pastor. I straight up tell them. And the first thing they react is like, okay, I mean, you could tell in their brains are like, a Christian pastor is at a nightclub on this cruise dancing with me, and hanging out with us and drinking next to me, like, what the heck? And the crazy thing I've learned about that is they're not going, what the heck? You are a hypocrite and you shouldn't be doing this. They're saying, wow, you would hang out with us. Really? You know what I mean? Like Jesus, would Jesus do that? And I would tell them straight up, of course he would. Why wouldn't he? Right? Opportunity to share the gospel right there, right? I am representing Jesus' heart to you. And I love that. That's why more and more I love like hanging out with non-Christians. That's why I host trivia nights at bars and stuff because I need to be out there. Because if I have this good news to share with the world that they need to hear that Jesus would go so far to tell them that, like they need to hear that. And I already forgot the original question, but but yes, like there are opportunities where it has come up where I basically tell them like, this is who I am, this is why I do this. And in that, even if it's not like this is how you become a Christian, I am sharing the gospel just by being there. But yes, there have been opportunities where I do tell them like this is because this is the God that I believe that he actually has reconciled you to him. Like he has nothing against you, and it's through Christ, right? Yeah. So anyway, there's that story.
That's awesome. I don't think that was the question I asked per se.
Yeah.
But you know what? That was a great
related.
story. Thank you for sharing though.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Incredible story. And going back to my question, I think the reason why I brought up the words despair, hatred, anger, guilt, those type of words is because when I have seen Christians preach the gospel or try to preach the gospel to other people, I've seen a lot of responses in the form of, nah, I'm good, or I don't want to be a part of this, or I don't believe in this, in a very resentment type of way. And to me, that's why I can imagine the same with you when you do the same. And obviously going from your cruise trip, it's very apparent that there's such a misrepresentation for what Christians could be, and that Christians can have fun in ways that non-Christians can have it. And when they see that, it really bridges that gap. So for you, where do you think that misrepresentation of Christians really stems from?
All right, if you're asking me like where does it really come from, if we go deep down, it comes from our brokenness. When it comes down to it, it comes from our sin nature. Our sin nature will read the Bible, which has the good news of a God that has always pursued his people, and we will twist it to become a God who is always about us trying to reach him by doing good works, right? And then we use that then to to place it on other people and judge them and say you're not being spiritual enough and you're not godly enough, right? Because you don't do this and this and this, right? We taken something so good and totally messed it up. So yeah, when it comes down to it, like it starts in nature, like a brokenness as people. And because of that, guess what happens is we hurt each other. We hurt each other. We put this on other people, and really Christianity for a lot of people and a lot of churches has become behavior modification, right? It's about the external. It's about how you behave or how you are spiritually on the outside. And if you think about it, all of us kind of either has been ingrained in our heads that's what it's about, or we have that tendency too, right? Is, a lot of times we ask each other, oh, how's it going with your faith? How's it going spiritually, right? And quickly, just think about how you would answer that question, right? A lot of us would say, well, I did my quiet times today, which is great. Friday I did my quiet times, or I went to church today. We quantify it with stuff we do, right? And then we also place on other people, thinking, oh, they're not spiritual enough, or they're not Christian because they don't do this or they do that. And that's what's become. And if Christianity then becomes just about this religion, okay, of doing this and doing that, then yeah, in a sense, it's easier to quantify and measure each other's spirituality, but that's not the intent or the heart of the gospel. And then what happens is we do the opposite of what the heart of the gospel is, which is to love and care and love people towards Jesus, who is full of love. But rather, we end up hurting each other and placing each other under these standards that not only we place ourselves under, but we place others under. And they can't meet it, all that stuff, then it's like, well, forget them, because it's not about the people anymore. It's about the religion. It's about the God that we misunderstand, right? We think God is, I need to please him. I need to appease him like an earthly king, or else with my head. And that's really the God that I have. Then I better make sure I shape up, and I better make sure everybody around me shapes up. And then if I was to come in as your staffer with that theology, I would be very different than how I am right now, right? I would be more about, what's wrong with you people? Like, shape up or ship out. What's with the words that are coming out of your mouth? I would be like, what the heck? Let this place be really a place where we all are spiritual, But I'm not about that, because God is not about that. So hope that makes sense. We do that to ours. We mess it up. Our sinful nature twists and end up hurting each other.
Yeah, I really like the point where you talk about quantifying faith, because I just think that's really true. And I think something that I've misunderstood at first, and I think a lot of Christians struggle to understand, is that we're not all destined to have a church-based role. For example, when I was younger, and even as I was growing, I always thought that I would have to be a pastor of some sort, or a messenger or speaker of some sort, to really not impress God, but to do his work. And I think something that I've realized over the last couple months is that's just not true at all. And it's about understanding where God has placed you and what does he want to do with you. Because for each person, we all have this unique journey where in the end, only you fit that journey that God has placed you on. God has given you the unique qualities, the unique experiences, and the unique mindset for you to prepare yourself for this journey. And I think that's what makes each person so special, is that we all have this different journey. And so for me, now I try to understand, how has God put me in the place where I can best honor him? And I think when I think about it like that, then I'm really figuring out, what is my identity in Christ? What has God shaped me to be? And for each person, we all have to follow some guidelines for how we should act, but the way we follow those guidelines is so different. And I think that's what makes faith so special, because in the end, we're all supposed to be in our own element and just be ourselves, be who God wants us to be. And I think understanding that is difficult, but once you get it, then it makes faith so much easier. And for you, it was having fun on the cruise ship and showing people that, hey, God's people can have the same amount of fun as you guys. And I think that's just something that we need to better understand. And I think it just makes faith a lot more easier.
Yeah, let me go off of that. I love I love how you just said that, because I very much resonate with that, especially in the last couple of years, like where I am now. I think you guys know me enough where when I'm around you guys, whether it be Wednesday nights at large groups, or just meeting up with you, that I hope you don't. Yeah, I don't think at all that you see a sense of like obligation, or a sense of like, this is my job. Gosh, I have to do this. Someone's telling me to do this, right? And really, I have God to thank for that, through the years of just shaping me, helping me understand not only my identity, but also my purpose being in this world, the mission that God has for me. But yes, Daniel, as you said, like how God's created me uniquely too, and seeing how all that fits in with campus ministry right now, and how that's been and that's why it's been so life-giving for me, because a lot of people talk about their jobs and things like that, and granted, a lot of jobs in this world, most jobs in this world will not satisfy and won't. And in a sense, this job for me, it won't ever fully satisfy, but at the same time, it's been so life-giving, because it has been the intersection of my passions, experiences, giftings, and heart, and opportunities, whatever. It's all intersecting with this in campus ministry. And so that's been so good to kind of discover, how God has led me through these years to where I am now. And the thing is, it may take years, right? Like I'm not that young, but like it's taken me this long to finally be at a place where I'm like, wow, this is every minute almost is so life-giving, but it is a great place to be, to know who you are, like to know your identity, know the purpose God has for you, and for you, like as an individual, uniquely in this world, as you shine for Christ, right where you are.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that figuring out your identity in Christ is such an easy thing, because ultimately it is a lifelong process. And a lot of times you're going to feel lost a couple of days, and sometimes you're going to feel like you got everything. Yeah. But I think through that process, this is where you learn, like, hey, I might not know what my identity in Christ really is, but that's where faith and trust really comes in. It's just being faithful in the sense that, hey, God's got my back, and I may not know what I'm doing, but God knows what he wants for me, and he's going to guide me. And I think once you realize that, you just put all your faith and trust in that, then the whole journey becomes easier. But it's just taking that step and overcoming that's the most difficult part.
Yeah. And that's pretty much why I'm here. I'm here to come alongside of you guys to really share with you stuff like I personally learned in my life through mistakes and through not knowing stuff, and through what I do know now, and as much as possible to help you guys in that journey of understanding, discovering like who you are in Christ, right? And who you are as God says you are, and what your mission is and everything. So that, as you're struggling through life and struggling through unknowns of what am I going to study, what I'm going to be in the future, all that stuff, that, hopefully you get an eternal perspective in all this. And as you guys carry on, that you'll find yourself in a place where, okay, I think I know how God has created me, and I think I know who I am in this world with the good news that I have and how good it is. And let that, carry you forward as you creatively live that out, in your life. So that's my passion and heart for you guys,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. And because we're on this topic of standard, image, that type of thing, obviously, as a pastor with kids, there's this added pressure for your kids to, in a sense, live up to what you've become because you're a pastor. And as a person that's more on the other side of this, is this something that you think about? And if you do, how do you respond to this?
Yeah. Definitely I've heard that before, and known pastors' kids and all that stuff. And usually it's like, oh, they're messed up because they're PKs, because they're pastors' kids. And the mess upness, if you think about it, you got to think about what messes them up. What messes a kid up? What messes me up, right? I mean, a lot of things do, but when it comes to the whole pastor thing, like let's say, well, my dad is actually a pastor too, so I'm a PK. Though he became pastor later on, so I didn't grow up as a PK. But what messes someone up is when they are in the house with someone, right? They know someone so well, they see someone every day. Is basically it's the hypocrisy, right? You see your dad or you see whoever on the pulpit, and they're saying all this stuff, telling people what to do at home. Oh, you see a whole different side of them, right? So for me, when it comes to my kids, okay, is yeah, they see my ugliness. They do. Okay, they for sure do. My family see my ugliness that you guys don't see. However, something I want to continue to stress and keep in mind, and I think I don't even have to keep in mind because I know like how good the gospel is with the gospel that I believe that is so good is none of us need to be hypocrites. Like really the reason someone's a hypocrite is because they're trying to hide something, right? Or they're trying to be two versions, you know? It's so for me is a sense of when I'm wrong, when I am messed up, when I yell at them and I know I'm wrong, like I do my best to come back and say that was messed up. I'm sorry, you know, and to let them know like I don't ever think I've arrived, you know, like I'm still learning. I tell them this all the time, like I'm still learning how to be a dad, you know. I'll be learning this for the rest of my life. Like, you know, when you were born, I tell my son, when you were born, that was my first time being a dad. Like I had no idea, and I still don't know what I'm doing. And a lot of, anyway, so to be able to show, in other words, show those cards, right? Like instead of like, you know, trying to hide it and say, oh, I got this because I'm holy and awesome and I'm right and you're wrong. But, you know, to constantly let them know I'm human, I'm still learning. And I think in understanding that when it comes to church ministry too, like when I would preach, I would show them like my vulnerability. Like when I say a certain point or wherever, I would say like I'm struggling with this too, you know, just like you guys. I wouldn't ever try to pretend I'm someone I'm not. And when I'm with you guys, you know, same thing too. Like I wouldn't be like I've arrived, you guys be like me. But rather like I'm learning this with you. If anything, yeah, I'm older, I have more experience. I could share those with you because I love you guys and because I made those mistakes too, you know. So it really is all in the approach or on the approach. Is that what I just said? The approach, the way you frame it and the way you your posture. That's the word I was looking for. In your posture. If your posture is I'm up here, you're down there, I'm on a pedestal, yeah, you're gonna be a hypocrite, right? But if your posture is, no, I'm down here with you. And even though you make those mistakes, all that stuff, they know like I'm down here with them, you know? And so with that, then hopefully they won't be as messed up as they could be, right? So yeah, that's something I keep in mind for them too, you know, because they see me in ministry all the time, right? I'm serving you guys. They know I'm on a podcast right now. In fact, I'll be honest with you right now. Right before this, I was threatening them. I was telling them, all right, I'm on a podcast for ACF. You guys make noises. You're going to have privileges taken away. I literally said that to them. Now I'm going like, yeah, I guess I kind of threatened them, but hey, it works. But you know what I mean? But at the same time, like it's real, man. Like I would tell them, okay, you know, maybe that was not the best way, but at the same time, they know like I'm not trying to hide anything, you know, and yeah, anyway, that was just kind of an example of that.
Yeah, like I'm definitely not a PK. I didn't grow up Christian, but like I think
I'm definitely not.
I think as like a first generation Asian American, I think it's really hard. Like when you're talking, right? I really resonated with it because like I think it's really hard, just like as a first generation Asian American, it's really hard to get to know your parents. Like I always feel like the only thing I know about them is like, oh, they came from Vietnam and then they came to America so we can have, you know, a good life. Yeah. But like other than that, that's really all I know about them. And like every time I would have a discussion about them or with them, it's like usually about school. And it's like really like sometimes it can be very tense too. Like I used to get into fights a lot with my parents just because like it would be about school or just like me being lazy or something like that, even though I am lazy. But besides the point, like I think I definitely resonate with that. I think that's really cool that you're doing that with your children and like you're very mindful of that. And yeah, maybe I'm as messed up as PK kids.
Appreciate it, Doug. And I am too, you know what I mean? Because I also live with my parents being a lot more of the traditional Chinese as well. So when it comes to like close relationship, not as, you know, we don't just hang out. We don't just talk about stuff. Yeah, before it was usually about school and stuff. And yeah, so I could relate with you with that, you know, when it comes to how you relate to your parents.
Yeah, it really resonates with Doug's point because I could just relate to it on so many levels. And I can't speak for all Asian American families, but here's what I can say about mine. I've struggled for the past 20 years in figuring out how I can get really close to them. And I think a lot comes down to the Asian culture. to the notion that we need to pretend that everything is okay all the time, and to send a message out that no matter what we go through, we're going to be okay, and we're going to be better than you. And for a lot of young kids, and for me also, at a young age, I was figuring out, how do I live up to my parents' standards, who've worked so hard from the ground up to give us the life that we have right now. And I think it creates this added pressure at such a young age, and then it's figuring out, how do we adapt to that? And so that's where the barrier's set. And for us, it's about showing our parents that, hey, we're succeeding and we're okay all the time. And once we both do that, then you really have a barrier set. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people. And that's why sometimes you hear people say that their friends are their true family, because your friends grow up with you and you guys go through the same struggles together. There's a lot more ways to relate with each other. Like, for example, let's say you're both in a math class, right? And it's a really hard math class. But because you and your friend, because you're both struggling together, there's not as much pressure on who's better on this competitive standard, but it's about being vulnerable with each other, because you guys get each other, because both of you guys know this class is really hard. So you guys are more receptive to those rants, to those concerns, worries, anxiety. And I think once you continue to build that for many years, for some of us, we think, wow, our friends are really our family, because we've gone through this for 20 years, and I can relate so much better with my friends than my family. And I think it's also on the kid, because at the same time, once both of you are pretending to be okay with everything, then it's who wants to be vulnerable first. And it's the fear of, hey, if I become vulnerable and take this risk, my parents are going to disapprove that and, in a sense, degrade me. And I think that's what really scares a lot of people away. And that's what leads to the idea of, I gotta live up to the standard, or I gotta live up to these expectations.
Yeah, it is. And the Asian culture is very much about, as you were sharing, it's the whole idea of saving face, right? The whole idea of how we present ourselves, right? And how people see us. And in a sense, to put it bluntly, I mean, it's putting on a show. And when you're trying to put it on a show, it's not authentic, right? And so whereas, your kids know exactly what's going on, right? Or not your kids, but you mean the kids. We know, us as kids, but also my kids, right? There's no hiding, And so when you're putting on a show, it's like, oh, we gotta, be like this. And if that's the priority, then the kids will be like, and we as kids with sense and get the message very clearly that the show is more important than the people in the show, right? Than the people, you know what I mean? And so I'm just kind of needing to fit into this show, into this role, right? That we're trying to make. That's tough. I mean, it's a very ingrained in the. I mean, it's a very much part of the culture. Now, there's a lot of, don't get me wrong, a lot of things I appreciate about being Asian. Actually, I'm happy to be Asian. I love Asian food culture. But there are things about it where, when it comes to our spirituality, right, or when it comes to faith, we've got to ask ourselves: am I a Christian first, or am I Chinese first? Right? For me, am I a Christian first, and am I a Chinese American first? Right? I'm a Christian first. My first identity is I'm a citizen of heaven. And then I happen to be a Chinese American Christian, right? Not flipped, right? And that's where you'll see a lot of, I'm not calling anybody out, but parents, wherever it be, our churches and things like that, all about, hey, priority, you got to study. And that's the most important thing. Then if you have time, then go to church, right? It's okay, which one comes first? What's more important, and what really is the value? And oftentimes it's flipped, and that's where it gets messed up, and that's where we get messed up too in our theology. We bring to our spirituality and our faith that idea of performance. It becomes a performance-based Christianity. It's all about a show, putting on a show, when it's really not, right? So,
Yeah, and I think something just to clarify is that studying should be prioritized. It should be something that is high on your list, because God has given you the opportunity to have an education in order to fulfill a future role. And I think it's important to honor that and to recognize that, hey, I'm here to learn so that in the future I've been equipped with the knowledge, with the skills to honor God in the best way that I can. And so studying should be prioritized. But what I think is really dangerous about that is the fact that humans just gravitate towards short-term success. It's about what do we find now that can give us pleasure, you know? And that's where temptations come in. And that's what makes this so dangerous, is that we lose sight of our future goals. We lose sight of our why and why we're here in the first place. And I think the most common example I can think of is your decision to come to the University of Washington. The idea of competitive majors. And when you first said yes to the University of Washington, your only goal wasn't to just get the grades necessary, but it was, hey, the University of Washington has given me can give me an education where I can have a future job in something that is fulfilling in the Lord's work. And I think what's so dangerous is because there's added pressure already with needing to get into a major, then as students, once you enroll in your classes, you're not necessarily thinking about all the concepts you're learning, but you're thinking about, how do I get the grade? How do I get the numbers? How do I make sure that I'm not falling behind? How do I make sure that I don't feel stupid, you know? And I think that's when, and for kids at ages from 18 to 22 to really understand that it's not a performance-based thing is so difficult, because in the moment you're thinking about, if I don't get into my major, what am I going to do with my life? And I think it's something that's really scary. And obviously that's where the faith and confidence in the Lord really comes in, that he has put you here because he knows that you're going to be okay with whatever he does. And I think to really trust that is so difficult for just people like us at such a young age. But it's something, if you truly understand, it makes living life easier. But obviously as humans, we struggle with this on a lifelong process.
Yeah. I mean, that's what faith is, right? Faith is that whole, it's seeing the unseen, right? Hebrews 11:1, faith is being sure of what we hope for, certain, right? Certain of what we do not see. Otherwise it'd be living by sight, right? It's living by faith. And it's not easy. For sure it is not easy, right? Like how do you see what you don't see? Or like, you know, that's asking us to like do what's unnatural, you know, because what's right in front of me is what I see. And I think we might have touched upon this in one of our large groups before, when I was talking to you guys about, like, there's the reality of what we see, and that's all in front of you, you know, when it comes to your studies and everything, your majors, what you're going to do in life. Oh yeah, this is the time when I had the alumni Yuri come and share, and I was talking about, like, you know, there's just so much pressure on you guys to do all these things. So how do we press forward in all this? And for me, you know, I was exhorting you guys, like, you know what, I'm not at all, and I would not at all tell you, forget your studies. It's all about Jesus, right? Because that's ignorant and that's dumb. You're here. You're at this university. It's more like, how do you put that into perspective? How do you put your studies and the hard work and the uncertainties of your major, all that stuff, jobs, all that stuff, how do you put that into perspective, especially if you believe in eternal life, right? Especially if you believe that there's the unseen. Because if there really is the unseen, which is faith, eternity, all that stuff, I think what we really need to ask ourselves is, which is more real? Like the uncertain, I mean, the faith, you know, the eternal, or the what's right in front of us. And I think many of us would say, right, what's right in front of us. And for sure, it's what we see. However, I think with the gospel, with Jesus, with the Spirit's help, we're able to see that what's really, really in front of us is actually what we don't see, and is actually the eternal, is actually, you know, the people around us needing Jesus, right? Like all those things we don't see, but we know because we have the faith that this is real. And we have the faith that, you know, everybody coming closer to Jesus is the best thing, better than if someone was just to, you know, be happy with a burger. You know, it's even though the burger's real, right? But giving them Jesus, right, in a burger maybe it's so much better because like I believe that's real. You know, yeah.
I see a lot of truth in that. But for now, we're gonna have to move on for a little bit. So
Sure.
we have a segment called Trip Down Memory Lane where
All right.
we're gonna ask you
Sure.
about past events in your life, and you're just gonna tell us what you remember from them. Does that sound good?
All right. Just kind of a quick thing I remember. Just go boom 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 boom. Okay.
Yeah, it can be quick.
Okay,
Or
sure.
if there is an event that we bring up that you find compelling, then you can talk about it more. All right. So, is it true that you still have all the notes that the girl you liked in 8th grade wrote to you?
Okay. You listened to that message? What? Yes. Yeah. I mean, if I said in my message, then it's true, right? Like I'm not a stand-up comic comedian that makes up stories or whatever. No, that's true. Yeah, I did like a girl, and I liked a girl probably every season of my life. Honestly, hey, I'll be honest with you. And so yeah, 8th grade, there's a girl that I liked, and I wrote her notes. That's what we did back then. We didn't have texts. We didn't have cell phones or email, okay? And so, you know what I did? I called girls up on the phone. I would talk to them on the phone, right? That's what we did back then. And then we'd write them notes, fold in different ways of folding it, pass it to them. They would pass it back. You get excited, open it, and go, oh, they didn't like me. You know, or like, yeah, whatever. So, no, that particular girl didn't like me back or anything. But yes, of course I kept all the notes. And to be honest, I think all the notes are still in my parents' house somewhere, like in the closet or somewhere stashed somewhere. I might have thrown them away. I don't know. But I'm very sentimental like that. You give me a card. One of you guys give me a card. I'll probably keep it for a while, especially if it's like really heartfelt. If it's not, then I'd probably keep it for like, I still keep it for a month, you know. But if it's heartfelt card, I would keep it for a while.
What do you remember about the time you performed the Backstreet Boys lip sync for your wedding?
Oh gosh, that was fun. That was really fun. And so, okay, in college life, I did some lip syncs with. Actually, I got my friends together to do lip syncs. That's what we did back then. This is before YouTube. Now, if YouTube was around, maybe we would have gotten famous, but maybe I wouldn't have been a pastor. No, but that's we did that back then. And so lip syncing was kind of like our thing. When we became seniors at our AACF, everybody was like, oh my gosh, Thomas and these guys are all doing lip syncs, boy band stuff. And by the end of the year, okay, so we had these things called VHRs or VHS tapes, VCRs. And we had our list, okay? We had a bunch of lip syncs. And full disclosure, I still have them, and they're on DVD form now. So if you ever want to check it out, and some of them are on YouTube. But anyway, they were on these VHS tapes, and we were mass producing them. I was connecting VH. If you don't know what, guys, listeners, if you don't know what that is, a Google image VCR, what it is, basically you could record, and it's old school. Anyway, so we were mass producing these tapes, VHS tapes, and then giving it to everybody, a lot of people who wanted them. Anyway, that's a backstory. So my groomsmen were a lot of these same guys that I was doing lip syncs with in college. So half of my groomsmen were best friends, like from college. Half my groomsmen were basically my brother and 2 other friends from home. Now, I basically like, you know what? Before my wedding, I was just like, I want to do a surprise for Esther. Don't want her to know about this. What am I going to do? And what am I going to do with my what's it called? My groomsmen. And it's like, oh yeah, we could do a lip sync like we used to do back in the day. And so yeah, I picked The One, I'll Be the One by Backstreet Boys. Listen to it over and over again in the car. And this is what I usually do with skits and stuff like that. I start imagining and start thinking about choreography. I start thinking about like how we're going to do this and how am I going to direct it. Okay, so because my friends they're from LA, right? My UCLA friends are from LA, or some of them. We were all in the same place. The only time we were able to practice was right before our rehearsal for the wedding. So they had just flown in, got together, and that was the only time I had with them. So I got them together at my church, actually, on the stage of the church, of the meeting room where I was youth pastoring at, and we practiced like nonstop for a while until we got it down. And then I was late to my own wedding rehearsal and I had to keep it a surprise. So I couldn't tell them why. And so my dad, my mom, other people are just kind of looking at me going, why are you late? Like, why are you late to your own wedding rehearsal? What's wrong with you, right? I'm like, yeah, we had to do something, you know? Anyway, so we did it. Yeah, and it was so fun. It's recorded. It's on YouTube on a low, not very good quality camera, but that's how what we had back then. But yeah, that's what I remember, and that I'll always remember it. Fun times, and Esther was very surprised and she loved it. So as you can tell in the video if you watched it.
Yeah, I did watch the video. You had Esther on.
All right. Wow, you did a lot of digging. This is good. Nice. Yeah.
All right. What do you remember about the time your family met and interviewed Chris Wondolowski?
So my family were Quakes fans, San Jose Earthquakes. They were the MLS soccer team of San Jose. Yeah, I never really got into any sports except soccer, and as in watching soccer, I didn't really. I played a little bit like as an adult, like a couple years ago. And the only reason I became a soccer fan was because my son is a huge soccer fan and he loves playing soccer, right? And so we became San Jose Earthquakes fans. What I love about the San Jose Earthquakes is that they're so accessible. Meaning I can meet the players like very easily. And that's because San Jose Earthquakes are not the Golden State Warriors, and they are not, they're not so big where like there's no way you can meet them. And that's what's cool about it, is because it's like so accessible. The stadium, I would still say it's my favorite stadium, and I miss it in San Jose, Avaya Stadium. It's small and it's cozy, right? It's like, it's cool. You get to know the fans around you, all that stuff. And then afterwards, the players will just be out there signing stuff. Once in a while, they'll have meet and greets at different places. Chris Wondolowski is probably the most well-known player of the San Jose Earthquakes. Reason being, just last year, he broke the record for the number of goals in MLS history. So he has the largest number of goals accumulated, right? So he's a really friendly guy. So we got a chance to meet him. And at that time, every player I was meeting, I started doing these things called the Sharpie interviews. I took a Sharpie, and basically I would hold it up, and you guys can't see it, listeners, but they could see it through our video. I would hold it up and be like, hey, so, all right, we're here with Chris Wondolowski. How are you doing? Let us know, how's your day? And I would just like pretend there's a microphone, right? So I was doing that with other players, and then so when I got a chance to interview him, I got a chance to do that, and it was a lot of fun. Kids were there, my wife's there, my brother's family was there too, so it's on video, as you've probably seen, so it's on YouTube. Really nice guy. What's really cool about him is he's the most well-known player on the team, and yet I found him to be most, like, everybody was friendly, but I found him to be the most down-to-earth. And great guy. Yeah, I miss that. That's a part I miss about being in San Jose.
Yeah, when I was watching your interview with him, I was pretty surprised to see that for such a soccer star that the line was pretty short. It was just a bunch of little kids. And something I found pretty funny and interesting was the fact that your daughter, Corinne, she would always ask the same question to each soccer player, and always be, do you love soccer? And I just thought that was funny.
Nice. Yeah, it's great to be able to meet players. Yeah. Yeah, it's great to meet the players, you know what I mean? Like you see them out there doing their thing, everybody's cheering, but then you get to meet them and get to know them as a person, really neat. Yeah.
All right, so moving on.
Sure.
You talk about how in 97 and 98, you went on a mission trip to China, and you described it as a life-changing moment for you. In fact, you said that God basically completely broke your heart there.
Yes.
And so I was wondering, what made this trip different from your previous mission trips, and how did that really change you as a person?
Yeah. So in 97 and 98, this was basically the summer after my sophomore year of college and junior year of college. So 97, summer after my sophomore year of college, I got a chance to go to China and teach English to students. Actually, the main purpose was to, share who we are as Christians and to, share the gospel and stuff. But you can't go there as a missionary, but you go there as a teacher, right? Which I did, and in doing so, I got to really get to know my students. I was given like a set of 12 students, no idea who they were, but for some reason, God just gave me this heart like broken for them since day one. I saw them, I was like, okay, these are my students for the next month here, and I have the gospel, I have Jesus, and they don't. And I have this short time with them to be able to share that with them. And so I remember that feeling and sort of burden that every single day I was like praying. I would literally on my knees like praying, God, use me today, like break me, whatever you would do so that they would know how much you love them. They would know that there's a hope in Jesus. So yeah, that's what broke my heart, was these people. And so throughout my whole time with them, just being with them, teaching them English, and then hanging out with them all day. It was a camp for them, so they actually stayed at the school. So morning time, taught them English. Afternoon, hung out. Or actually, no, afternoon was nap time for all of them. Then nighttime was like hang out. We went to town together. They took me around. We shopped together. I bought them stuff. It's so fun. And we had like cultural events going on at night, like programs. Anyway, all that's to say is got to develop really close relationship with them to the point where by the time we were about to leave, I was so sad. Like it literally was just scenes from the movies, like where I was leaving, we were all leaving in a bus and they went chasing after the bus. Everybody was in tears. I was in tears. Such a crazy time where when I came back home from that trip, I think God just blew me away with a bigger picture of what he's doing in this world, a bigger picture of the people in this world that he has given me a heart to love, that I don't know if I'll ever see them again. And I want to see them in heaven forever, given that kind of a big, was it a sense of reality? I would say spiritual reality, wake-up call for me coming back home was a sense of like, what am I doing with the rest of my life? And this is, once again, I was about to be a junior. I was undeclared major, just recently declared psychology as my major just because, I don't know, study about people, sure, whatever, and how they think. But that was the big question. In light of what I just experienced in China, in light of God's heart for them and my heart for them wanting to know Jesus, and if Jesus is really real and there's eternal perspective and there's heaven, how am I going to spend the rest of my life? And I knew like there was no other way and nothing I wanted to do than to be in the midst of what God was doing, however that looked like. Now for me, okay, it's different for other people, and I don't think this is the only path. Some people are going to be doctors, some people are going to be engineers, computer science, all that stuff. For me, I had no interest in anything. Like I didn't know what I was going to do. I was undeclared. I had to declare a major because I had to graduate with a major. But for me, because I was just like, I don't know, but I do know this. I do know that God is calling me, like literally calling me to ministry to his people for the rest of my life, because I cannot live and die like without like my goal, bringing as many people in heaven as possible with me, kind of thing. So with that, yeah, to answer your question, that changed my life. I came back, I was forever changed. That was when I answered God's call for me to go in full-time ministry in 1997. So much so that following year I went back to China again. Not the same place. This whole other story, but similar story, basically, in a nutshell. Very affirming. Got to lead some people, like students to Christ. Very affirming. And so I knew I wanted to go into ministry and that God is calling me there. So from then on, life trajectory paved or changed or just discovered or known, like God saying, this is the trajectory of your life. And ever since then to this day, how many years ago was that? 1997? I don't know my math, but that's a long time ago. That's 20-something years ago, right? I don't know. You guys do math.
Yep.
To this day, I'm still on that path, right? Like, it's been affirming ever since then, right? Becoming a youth pastor, becoming pastor, campus ministry, podcast with you guys right now. That's become my life goal and mission, and it's been life-giving. It's been so good. So yes, changed my life.
Dang, that's pretty dope.
It is dope.
And from your story, I'm wondering, how did the kids surprise you in a way that helped alter or surpass your expectations? And how did you see God working in you and in them?
Besides the fact that they had really weird English names, some of them were just really weird names. One of my students' name was Muskmelon. One of my students' name was Coffee. Anyway, aside from that, I think original question was like, what kind of things was I like surprised by or like that was different? Can you rephrase that question? Yeah. Okay. Or rephrase that or repeat. Yeah. Real quick.
Yeah. So the question was, how did the kids surpass your expectations or surprise you? And how did you see God working in you and in them?
Yeah. Okay, so the two trips were different, and that the first one was the first one. It's like when I knew what I was like, I knew those expectations now, or whatever, and it was different. So the first time, what it really surprised me was how, I don't know, how innocent, quote unquote innocent, or how childlike I would say like these students were. I mean, they were middle schoolers or high schoolers around that age, and they were just like, I don't know, they were just so like. So I mean, they would just run up to us. You know what I mean? Like, they'd run up to us. They want to get to know us. They just want to practice their English, and they just want to hang around you. And I don't know. It was just so childlike. I mean, not childish, but childlike. And what I mean by that is like there's no like they're trying to hide anything. It was so, in a sense, pure, in a sense like innocent. And to me, that broke my heart. I think it broke my heart in a sense of like that was so touching. At the same time, like, because they were just so like I saw in them like what Jesus is talking about when he says, "Let the children come to me," right? Like these are the children. Like these are the people that God is very much pursuing and wanting to come to himself, and knowing that like, well, I don't know if they don't know him, and here I am to introduce Jesus to them, you know. So that broke my heart, and that really showed like God showed me his heart for them, for sure, in the first trip and the second trip too. So that was that. Second trip, I knew that about them already, but coming in, I think I was really surprised by how open they were to the faith. So the first time I went to China, I was very careful, and that's good. You want to be careful when you go to China, not to go on that street and proclaim Jesus, because you're not supposed to. Second trip, we were a little further from Beijing. You know, it was my second trip too. I was like, I really want you to share. And they tell you not to share certain things, especially the phone, because it could be tapped, all that stuff. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I was dumb, or maybe I was bold, but maybe both. I have already left them, and we were saying goodbyes, crying, all that stuff. And I was so broken for them, and I was like really wanting to know Jesus. And we were on the phone. Like, I called them up when I was in a different place in the country, and I talked to them one by one. Like, I called them each, and I actually just shared the gospel. I just told them about Jesus, and I think four of my 12 students, that's a third of my class, accepted Jesus over the phone. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what happened? And so that really surprised me, in that they were open. And the reason I still remember to this day, they say, I asked them, like, how do you want Jesus now? How do you know he's real now? Because you told me before the trip, or in the beginning, that you didn't. He says, well, I know, I believe now, because I've seen it through you guys, through you guys as in our team. And I was like, wow, there's something real about our testimony as a team. When Jesus says, people know that you're my disciples, how? By your love for each other. And I think we lived that out. We were able to live that out that summer. God shows his power, man. So that was a huge way God really surprised me.
Yeah, and what I find so fascinating about that is just the purpose of these mission trips, that even though the living standards in these developing countries aren't the best, for example, like the cleanliness, the housing, the bathroom, the toiletries, all of that, it helps you focus on the people instead, and it helps you show that the people are the most important thing about this. And this is just the difference between first world and third world countries, is that for third world countries, when they see something new, they instantly gravitate towards it because it's something that they haven't seen before. It's hope, in a sense, because it's something new, it's something fresh. And so in this mission context, it's you, man. You, as Thomas, you're the hope for them, because hey, they've never seen you before. Maybe he's going to do something different, Yeah. And so as those kids are just yearning for that knowledge, yearning for that information, that's what they would put their hope into, because maybe it can help change their lives. And so for a lot of people in third world countries, all they really have is faith in God, because that's all they can rely on, because they don't have anything else. Whereas people here in first world countries, when we have the living standards, when we have things figured out, when we know we're living comfortable, then we think, why do we need to pursue this? Why do we need God? Because we have all the things we have. And I think that just shows the difference between the two.
Yeah. Sometimes, when you say that, it's the whole like less is more kind of thing. The more we have, the more the stuff that we have owns us kind of thing. I think there's a lot of barriers to faith and to seeing the unseen here, because we see a lot of things right in front of us, and what we see here is very appealing. and grabs our attention, and that's what we put our security and focus and significance in here. When you're stripped of all that stuff, then you're at a place where like, what is my security and significance when I don't have those things? My security is in Christ, right? Like, you have that opportunity. So not impossible. Obviously, we can have faith here, but in a sense, it is harder. It is harder sometimes in the first world, for sure.
Yeah, and we know that your lifelong mission was to obviously share the gospel with as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But if you didn't feel like God was pulling you to be a pastor, what other job do you think you would be doing instead?
Good question. Sometimes I think about that. It's like, if I wasn't a pastor, what would I enjoy doing, right? Gosh, honestly, who knows at that point? I thought about acting, but I would think about it, but then I'll be like, that's not realistic. I mean, it's just so hard as an Asian male, too, So I thought about it, but didn't pursue it, obviously, or anything. I don't know. See, especially back then, I didn't know my gifts, or I didn't know how God was creating me. But if you were to ask me right now, let's say I wasn't going to be a pastor / campus minister, all that stuff, what would I be doing? And I could tell you this. I think I would be interested in continuing doing like trivia, or like hosting trivia, being an MC somewhere. I think I would love to be a cruise director one day, but that's not realistic because I can't just leave my family for months, but maybe when I'm retired. I don't know. Being a tour guide, I don't know. What else would I do? Just anything to do with energy producing. I love producing energy. I love hosting. I love announcing. Maybe a wedding MC, but actually getting paid for it. Those type of things. I love entertaining, so something to do with that. I don't know. I don't know if those are the answers that surprises you. but at the same time, I would, what? When it comes to like the gospel, though, like, okay, to be realistic, actually those were realistic, but to put it in perspective, I would do all those things knowing who I am in Christ. In fact, believe it or not, before we moved up here, I had no idea I was going to be a campus minister. Actually, we knew we were going to leave our church. I was going to step down as a church pastor and just move forward to something. But for me, the idea of the unknown, of like, I could work at Starbucks, I could work at coffee shops, I could do this and that, and you know what? I don't ever need a title anymore in order to be God's child, like on His mission. And so I got to the point where I'm like, I don't need a church pastor title. I'm gonna outreach and tell people about Jesus because the gospel has gripped me, and I don't need to be hired as a pastor to do that. And that started freeing me, going like, I could work at a coffee shop, I could do anything and share Christ through those means. And so I would say if I wasn't in campus ministry at AACF, though I love being one, if I wasn't, I think I would just share Christ through other means, like whatever job, it wouldn't matter, kind of thing. Especially now that Esther, my wife, is doing the full-time job, I have the freedom to be able to explore in that sense. And Yeah,
I really enjoyed the part where you mentioned that you didn't care what label you held, because in the end, it was about how you would share the gospel. And I think that's something, again, for a lot of Asian Americans, that's hard to realize, because when our parents expect us to be something and we don't want to be that. For example, if someone wanted to be a YouTuber, right? A lot of Asian people would initially look down upon that, because that's just different from what they were used to, from being in CS, from being a doctor, from being an engineer of some sort. And I think I really enjoyed the fact that you didn't care whether you were a barista or, just an employee of some sort, because for you, it was, what do you enjoy and how do you honor God the best way? And I think for us, that's what we need to figure out, and that's what's important to us, And I think what matters is that when we find the freedom in that, then it doesn't matter if other people accept that or not. And for me, when I started to realize this, it was for me to see that, hey, it doesn't matter what other people think what I'm doing, as long as I know I'm honoring God in the best way possible. And for on the outside, their job is to embrace and accept that this is what God has created me to be. And yeah, I see that a lot in you.
Yeah, for sure. And God has been so good in providing for me and blessing me with a lot of pieces being put in place. Like, this isn't just like just happened, like God provided every step of the way. I would tell you, if God didn't provide me with the wife I have, I wouldn't be here today. Like, that's a fact. I would not be in Seattle, right? Like, I would not have moved up in faith. I would not have been able to do this, if God did not provide me with, my parents who are not against me going to ministry. In fact, they were for it. They're okay with it, because a lot of Christian parents, even because they're Asian first or Chinese first, then they're Christian, they'd be like, yeah, but don't ever be a pastor because you won't make the money, right? Or this and that. No, my parents were totally for it, when I told them that I was called to ministry. In fact, my dad then was called to ministry like around the same time, and he became a pastor too, So that's another piece that, like, wow, God has provided and given me so much to allow me to be on this path that clearly he called me on, right? And it's been such a great ride. It's been such a great journey, and looking back and looking forward, and right now it's like God's been good. There's a sense of like God will provide. There's that saying, it's like God doesn't call the equipped, right, or something, but God equips the called, right? And I really feel like God's done that with me. So I praise him for that.
When I think about the saying that you just said, for me, it's such a scary thought because, hey, when I think about the things that I enjoy doing and I don't enjoy doing, and I feel like God is calling me to do something that I don't particularly enjoy, then I start questioning myself, like, hey, is this really God, or am I misinterpreting something? And I think that's just a lot of inner conflict. But I think ultimately it comes down to the fact that God knows more than you. In fact, God had this whole journey planned for you. And for us, it's our job to simply trust and put our faith that in the person that knows all. Because we have to trust that what we see is not what we're supposed to be doing, and that God he oversees everything, right? So it just comes to that faith and that trust.
So what really helps also with me, and I've met up with you, Daniel, before, and talked to you about that too, is what helps with me, and I think would help you too, and probably you, Doug, too, is other people. I think you are all people here, as in just trusting like the voices of wise words, like from people, whether it be people who know me really well. Yeah, basically people who know me really well, and people who are older too, and all that stuff, and trusting like their advice and hearing from them, right? Like throughout this whole journey, I've talked to my pastors, right? I talked to people around me, my brothers and sisters in AACF, my older brothers and sisters in AACF, and like in this whole journey, if people were to tell me, yeah, Thomas, I don't know, I would think twice about that. I think you want to go to ministry because you want to blank, whatever, that was a selfish reason, then those are the voices I need to trust and hear, because they know me, right? But they were very affirming with that, and because they were, I need to trust that too. It's like, yeah, they know me, and they would, like, a pastor would tell me, like, yeah, I think God's called you to be a pastor. Like, okay, it's like, okay, let's explore that, and what I'm trying to say is, yeah, like this is why we have the body, this is why we have ACF, this is why we have our church and faith community. I've learned that God speaks a lot to me through people, and through people who know me very well. Yeah.
Right, and I think it's intentional for God to speak to us through a lot of other people, because in the end, that's who we're supposed to rely on, his own people. And I think that, in a sense, has helped me just understand how important community is, and how important it is to say, I need help, because you have people around you to help you discern things, make sense of things, and to just help you stay sane in a sense, or to help you get on track. And I think that has really just helped me understand that, hey, it's okay to rely on help, because you're going to find the answers through those people. All right, so we obviously asked other fellow ACF members to throw in questions that they had about you. And so we've answered a couple of them throughout the podcast, but we want to take this time to answer the rest of those questions. So I'm just going to ask the question. You could just answer them however you want. Okay, so the first question is, what is your favorite non-worship song and non-worship artist?
Oh man, you should have given me these earlier so I could think through them and have a question right on the spot. But maybe this is part of the question is whatever comes up in mind. Currently? Or oh gosh. Okay, well, I've been listening a lot to the Jonas Brothers currently, but so that's like current favorites. But no, back when I was in college, and I think for a long time, my favorite band. See, this is gonna date me, man, as outdated and old. But have you guys heard of the band called U2?
Yes.
You have? Okay. Doug? Probably not.
I have not.
Okay.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what that is. It's a band of 4 guys. That's 4 old guys. But yeah, no, I through college and stuff, and even afterwards, I was listening to them a lot. Really good music. Anyway, got to go to one of their concerts. Anyway, so one of their songs is called "With or Without You." It's a good song. It's a song that like you want to play like for a girl. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So I like U2. Back in the day. Now, as I'm getting older, for some reason, I'm starting listening to people who are younger. Okay, if you notice that, back when I was younger, I was listening to people who are older. So yeah, I love pop now. I love listening to Taylor Swift and Jonas Brothers because they keep me happy. I don't know. So you're saying non-Christian, so there you go.
Yeah, Taylor Swift's a bop, man. All right, so what do you think is the best travel spot for a group of college students?
Yeah, maybe I would just say California. I mean, if I'm talking to people from here that don't travel to California much, then yeah, go down to LA or something. I mean, don't do that now. But I would say, yeah, LA is a good touristy spot with different things. Good food, all these different experiences. Bay Area has a lot of good things. But honestly, for me, I wouldn't go there because I grew up there and I went to school in LA, so I wouldn't go there. But if you're talking about budget, right? That's why that comes to mind. It's like, well, then explore California. If you've never experienced California, see why it's so expensive to live there, and you'll know. Yeah, I haven't frequented much places around here, or I haven't gone too many places around here to really suggest anything. Yeah, here, but I would just say, hey, go visit California.
In-N-Out or Shake Shack?
Oh, In-N-Out.
Oh no.
Shake Shack is like heck expensive, man. Isn't it?
Right?
Like In-N-Out, you get like burger. It's familiar. It's the same thing on the. Okay, so Doug, you're not agreeing here. Or what's going on here?
In-N-Out is overrated. That's all I'm gonna say.
Overrated for
it's
a
very
reason.
Overrated. But honestly, like to compare In-N-Out and Shake Shack, they're a little different because price and like quality too, right? They're very different, so it's really hard to compare the two.
Sure. But
so I don't think the debate should be like In-N-Out versus Shake Shack. It should be like something else.
That's true. It's probably not even on the same whatever.
Yeah.
I will say I never had Shake Shack to the point where I even know what it tastes like. So that's why I say In-N-Out, because that's familiar to me. And familiar so much that I miss it, right? And you mentioning that, I want one right now. That sort of thing. Every time in California now, we go to In-N-Out first stop,
All right. Can you recall what was one of the scariest moments of your life?
Ooh, scariest moment of my life. Yes. Okay, a couple things come to mind. One is when I was asked to speak at a youth camp in South Africa. Okay. And so this wasn't even in South Africa. This is in the United States when this happened. Okay, so I prepared all my messages and everything, and yeah, they're flying me out there. Okay, so they're paying for my flight, everything, and it's getting ready. I think a week before flying out there, I decided to just look at my passport, and I realized it was expired. And so I I panicked. I was like, what am I gonna? Because I what am I gonna do? Yeah, that was scary because I was like, I'm gonna let everybody down if I can't go there. This is, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? So I totally panicked. That was really scary. But it all worked out. Expedited the thing, paid heavy premium for that, but had to do it, and made it there. But had I not checked that, oh my gosh, to this day, I think back and like, that's scary. That sucks. Okay, so there's that type of scary. Then there's the scary of when it comes down to it, if you were to ask any parent who has kids, right? Like obviously parents have kids. What's the scariest thing? It probably has to do with your kids. Okay, so there was this one time when my daughter, she was having I guess she was sick and she was throwing up. I don't know, things like that. Not only that, but she was having seizures. Okay, and this was when she was like 2 or younger, 1.5. I don't know, 1. So she can't really explain herself or anything. So she would start to like having seizures. And at that time, I didn't know much about it. So me and Esther, we panicked, man. Like that was scary because I was like, oh my gosh, all the crazy thoughts come through your head. Like, am I going to lose my girl right now? Right. Like I was in tears. I was like, what am I going to do? And it's just panic. Call 911, all that stuff. They got firefighters out here, for her. And they were all chill and everything. Yeah, but it's just so scary, right? Like to see your kid, like, just like, I can't do anything about it. Like I couldn't help her. Like she was shaking and you're trying to like talk to her, but she couldn't hear you or like, anyway, that was scary. I would say that's probably one of the scariest times of my life. Obviously she's fine. Thank God. But that was scary.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. One more question.
Yep.
So as current Thomas, what would you tell your college self?
Oh, great questions, man. I would tell myself, Thomas, I know you like her a lot, but she's not your wife.
Very, very sound advice.
And that would apply for every year, no matter who it was, right? Because I didn't meet Esther until the year after college. Okay, so that's one thing. Depends how much time I have when it comes to what I could say to myself, right? If it's just one thing, I'll say that. But if it was like a time where I could sit down and talk to my past self, I would sit him down and I would tell him everything, a lot of stuff I shared with you guys about the gospel and how good it is and how I've gotten it all wrong. Not all wrong to the point where it's heresy, but got it wrong in terms of emphasis on the love of God that pours out into us, because back then I was still very performance based when it comes to my spirituality. I was still very much like, you got to be a good Christian by doing so and so and so. Yeah. And I think, going back to it, a lot of it I think I would just tell myself, don't worry about the girl. You'll get the girl. Or God will provide. God will provide. Like, it's going to be good. Mm-hmm. You like that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That hits all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, there it is.
There it is.
Thank you.
Yes.
Utah.
Man, that was fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you guys.
So yeah, I got nothing much to say except the fact that like, share, subscribe.
Nice.
And we hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you later.
All right, take care, guys.